Hello and welcome to Techie Chap. In today's episode, I'm taking a look at the latest open source Linux release of Solus OS. This is version 4.5, which came out in January of this year and is the latest release, codenamed Resilience. Now, in the past, the Solus major releases have been fairly sporadic. However, since early last year, or 2023 in April, one of the main developers, Josh Strobel from the technical steering team, announced a series of measures to restore order to the Solus project. And since then, we've seen the release of Solus 4.4 last year and now Solus 4.5 this year. So it does look like the Solus OS is back on track in terms of major releases. But what does Solus OS offer in terms of the myriad of Linux open source operating systems that are out there? What's different about Solus? Well, the original drive behind developing Solus, and indeed the Budgy desktop that Solus runs on, was to deliver something that was a modern take on the traditional desktop. The Solus release actually, although it used to be purely Budgy, is now in various desktop edition flavors, including GNOME, which you can see here, a KDE flavor, and also an XFCE flavor as well. The XFCE desktop environment is actually what is new in the Solus 4.5 release, one of the major new additions to the Solus family. And in fact, they say that the XFCE release is almost like a beta. In terms of what comes with Solus 4.5, it does have a new Calamares installer, which you will be seeing a screenshot running in the corner of this video. The Calamares installer is very easy to use, very straightforward. You really don't need a lot of information to get this installed, and indeed the installation on this Lenovo X1 Carbon Generation 3 only took about 10 minutes onto an SSD hard drive. You get some new default applications, namely Firefox, the latest version 121.0, and actually if we just take a look at that, 121.0, there we go. And LibreOffice is installed by default, as well as Thunderbird, the latest version 115.6. For audio and video, multimedia playback, they've actually moved away from Pulse on the Budgy Edition, and Pipewire is now the default audio media framework. So although there's not much difference in the actual sound user interface, in the background the media framework has been entirely replaced by Pipewire. There is also additional support for ROC-M AMD hardware, so that provides GPU accelerations for applications like Blender and hardware accelerated machine learning with support for things like PyTorch. This latest release also has the backbone of Linux kernel 6.6.9, and what that means for this release is better hardware support in general. They've also made some additions where they list that their kernel configuration now includes all Bluetooth drivers, sound codecs and sound drivers by default, so you don't have to go hunting around for a Bluetooth driver, and that the kernel modules are no longer compressed. There is a new CPU governor in schedutil, and they've also modified the kernel as well to use the Bohr scheduler by default. and that's optimized for interactive desktops. They give an example here that under heavy CPU load, the system will try to prioritize processes that it thinks are interactive and maintain a responsive feel. They've also added upgraded support for Mesa, which has been upgraded for 23.3.2, and that includes updated Vulkan support for Intel 7th and 8th gen GPUs, and also ray tracing support for Intel Xe GPUs. So there really is quite a lot of extra new hardware supported in this release of Solus. But if we look, we're looking here at the Budgy edition of Solus, which is really, for me, is kind of the heart of Solus. That's how I first encountered a Solus desktop, was when someone called Ike Doherty was developing it, and Solus was a complete desktop, including Budgy, but it's all been split out now. Now you have friends of Budgy that develop the Budgy desktop, and then you have the Solus team that develops the Solus operating system. But included still with Solus and in the Budgy edition is things like the Raven notification bar that you see here on the right. You can run some widgets like, for example, calendar. Over here we have the launcher bar, and there's quite a lot actually that can be configured in the Budgy desktop. Some of it is actually hidden. So for example, if I launch the file manager, here's the file manager. As you can see, I've been testing this out quite a lot. So I've been recording videos and so on. Now this actually is the Nemo file manager, which I believe is also a new addition to Solus. They've transitioned away from another type of file manager to Nemo, which you normally find in the Cinnamon desktop environments. However, in here you will see that there is no file menu, and you'll find that a lot of these, for example, aren't showing thumbnail previews. These are some desktop recordings I recorded earlier. So here's the first thing I found out about Solus. If you right click in the white space there, that's right click in the white space there, you will then get the file menu, and that is where you can essentially edit the preferences. So go to edit preferences, and if you're familiar with Nemo, then this is you'll already be familiar with this. But it might not be immediately clear to newbies that there's this additional menu. Although I do like the fact that it is hidden by default. It kind of gives it a cleaner look and feel. So one of the things you can do here is if you click on preview, and you can say that preview files, you want to preview files that are, for example, up to 100 meg in size. And now, as you can see, these are now changing, so you're seeing a preview of the file. And indeed, if I went up to 1 gig, then it will be able to preview files up to 1 gig. There you go. You can see now that I'm able to see a preview of all those MKV files now. I won't leave it at 1 gig because that's quite a bit, but what I will do is for now is just put it at 100 meg, and that's where you can toggle some of the preferences, things like how Nemo appears. You can change the sidebar, the toolbar, etc., and you can make the menu bar appear by default as well. Let me just come out of that, and you can also add some extra plugins as well for Nemo and scripts if you need them. One thing to say about Solus is that the operating system itself is built from scratch, and it has its own package manager. So for example, if I launch terminal, the package manager is something called EOPKG. So if I type EOPKG and we just do that, let's just expand that. The EOPKG essentially queries the Solus repositories for applications. And here you can also do things like manage repositories using the EOPKG, which is actually quite cool. You can add third-party repositories if you needed them to Solus, and you can also remove them as well if you don't want to use or utilize those repositories any longer. You can also upgrade Solus as well using EOPKG, and as you can see, there are quite a few options there for this package manager, which is actually quite neat. I think it's quite a decent package manager. There's a lot of options there for managing Solus. Solus itself can actually also support and does support Snap and Flatpaks, and it also has its own software center. So if we just launch Software Center here, it's a fairly straightforward and simple looking software center, but actually it does work fairly well. These look like there's not much available, but essentially if you click on into them, it'll then essentially expand onwards. So for example, if I click on graphics, I then get all the graphics applications listed, and it's a good list, a good curated list of applications here that you can choose. If nothing else, you could use this to explore and find applications that you might not already be aware of. So for example, there's a whole section here on GStreamer runtime which you might not already be aware of, and also some new video applications that I wasn't aware of are listed in here as well. I should say here in Software Center there is this third party section, and that's for software projects that either have some sort of licensing or aren't necessarily open source in nature. For example, Google Chrome is included here. You've got a few versions of Google Chrome. You've got Android Studio, which of course is from Google. You've got Bitwig Studio, music production system, NPass, a multi-platform password manager, GitKraken, a luxurious Git client, apparently, and there's a few other bits and pieces. Things like MoneyDance, for example, are included here, Plex. So a really interesting curated list of applications. Of course, you can search for an application here as well. So if, for example, if I could spell it correctly, let's type Audacity. There we go. So Audacity is already installed. I've already installed that. Pretty much find most of the applications that you would need to get by. The list of applications, certainly the curated list of applications, I think particularly now that Solus supports Flatpak and Snap, has really grown over the years. It used to be quite a tightly minimalist curated list of applications for Solus, but that is definitely no longer the case with Solus 4.5. So taking a deeper look into the Budgy desktop, if we have a look in the menu system here, we can see Budgy Control Center and Budgy desktop settings. So if we go into Budgy Control Center, this is really quite a good selection of preferences and settings for the system itself. So from here you can set your Wi-Fi, you can connect to different networks, Bluetooth, of course. Bluetooth is enabled by default here and actually works well. You can see it's detecting all sorts of things on Bluetooth already, and I could go ahead and set those up. Background, there's obviously a nice selection of backgrounds here. Notifications, you can choose what's going to display a notification in your Raven window here on the right hand side. Incidentally, if you do get a notification, if you look down the system tray here in the bottom right, this will normally turn orange if you have a notification that you haven't read. multitasking, so you can do things like active screen edges. You can essentially move things to the left or right, and it will almost auto tile to that side. There is also multi-monitor support as well, so you can have the workspace on all displays or workspaces on primary display only. You can set the amount of workspaces available as well. Online accounts, there's support for a good range of online accounts should you need it straight out of the box. So you can see that Google's there, Nextcloud is there, Microsoft. So that's in a way nice to see. At least you have the choice to connect to these environments in a fairly easy way if you wanted to. You have your sound controls. Now there's some pretty decent array of sound controls there. Then you've got power, so you've got different power modes that you can set. So performance, balanced or power saver. Currently I'm on balanced, and you can choose when the screen turns off, automatic power saver, etc. All good stuff. Some display settings. You've got scale of 100% or 200%, so it's not incremental scaling. And mouse and touchpad as well, so you've got some elements here where you can do things like 2-finger scrolling if you wanted to, if your touchpad supports it. Okay, so that's the Budgy control center. If we just go back here and go to Budgy desktop settings. Alright, Budgy desktop settings, this is where you can customize the look and feel of Budgy. So for example, if we go to panels down here and settings, we can set, for example, a transparency on the bottom panel here. And indeed we can actually add new panels if we wanted to further customize the Budgy desktop. You have options here to customize the Raven toolbar on the right hand side, so you can add extra widgets. In terms of extra widgets, there isn't really that much available. The only one I can see is usage monitor. That isn't already there, so let's just add that in as well, and let's see what that looks like. There we go. That's what the usage monitor looks like in the Raven toolbar. You've got some window settings, so quite detailed window settings. I wouldn't be touching these too much, but at least they're there if you need them. Then you've got style, so you can set the widgets, what the widgets appear like, the window decorations, icons, cursor, notification, dark theme on or off, or built-in theme, animations, desktop. You can choose to have desktop icons on or off. You can see how that works there. The click policy, so at the moment by default the Solus 4.5 is single click, so you only have to single click on items to open them. However, you can quickly change that here within the Budgy desktop settings to double click. Icon size, so you can make those small or you can make those normal size. You can see it changes dynamically on the go there. And fonts as well. So there's quite a lot of customization options within Solus by default. Other default applications that come with Solus 4.5 Budgy Desktop Edition is Rhythmbox Music Player. You also get Celluloid instead of VLC as your default video player. I've gone ahead and installed Audacity, but there is a kind of a mix of best of applications from GNOME and Cinnamon, I kind of feel. So for example, you've got Eye of GNOME for browsing images, and then we've got disks here, and actually I believe if we click about disks, yeah, it's the GNOME disk utility. Then of course we're running Nemo as we looked at earlier, which is ordinarily run under Cinnamon. So it's kind of a So it's kind of a best of edition mishmash of Cinnamon and GNOME applications here that are installed, as well as some bespoke Budgy applications such as the Budgy Control Center and the Budgy Desktop settings. So wrapping this up now, as I take a look at About here and just show you some specifications on the system I'm running this on, which is an i7 5600U, 8 gig of RAM, and so I'm running on a 250 or 240 gig SSD. The Budgy version 10.8.2. The OS is obviously Solus 4.5 Resilience. It's a 64-bit operating system. The windowing system is X11, not Wayland. And the kernel version is Linux 6.6.9-269.current. That's the Linux kernel version. And if we just take a look at how much RAM, how hardware intensive is this system? Well, I can tell you that given that I'm recording the desktop here and my audio, things are running at just under 40% CPU usage and just over 30%, 33.9% of memory usage on 8 gig. So this isn't a particularly light desktop by any means, but nor is it a very heavy desktop. It's somewhere in between. I would say that the Budgy desktop team haven't gone to great lengths to offer anything too radical here. The original design philosophy behind Solus was that it was deliver something that was a modern take on the traditional desktop, and I would say that has largely been obtained here. Over the iterative releases of Budgy Desktop, they've added more and more options to make it feel like a much more mature desktop environment. So, for example, there are a lot more customization options now available. The Budgy Control Center now seems much more mature. If nothing else, it doesn't offer anything particularly new. If you're someone looking for something like a radical desktop environment, that's not what Budgy Desktop is. What it is a solid desktop environment, and I have a feeling it will garner quite a few fans, because it's good to see a Linux release that at one time it looked like they were going to disappear entirely, but now the boat seems to have righted and they are definitely back on course with Solus 4.5. So yes, a very solid release. Well done to the Solus team. So if you have liked this video and would like to see more, then please click on like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for watching.